Many board games are thematic. It's something else entirely to be cinematic. For a game to be cinematic, it needs to tell its story visually. It should have an evocative setting, deeply developed characters, and a compelling plot with stakes. When you're playing a cinematic game, you simply cannot help but see a movie in your mind. Hollywood, pay attention. These are my top 10 most cinematic solo board games. This video is sponsored by Mindclash Games and their new expansion to Voidfall, Voidfall Resurgence, which is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. Resurgence features several optional new modules that change and enhance every aspect of the game, including new psionic powers, 6 new houses with new technologies, 4 new Voidborne fleet types, and a brand new solo/co-op mode called Incursion. As part of their Kickstarter campaign, you can also get a 1 to 2 player narrative campaign expansion called The Last Novarch. They're also offering a reprint of the deluxe base game Galactic Box and even an upgrade kit for owners of the retail edition. The campaign for Voidfall Resurgence ends in about a week, so if you're interested, please go check out their Kickstarter page. I've also made a video where I play through the new Incursion mode, so go check that out. Links for everything are provided in the description below. Number 10 is Arkham Horror the Card Game. Arkham Horror the Card Game is a cooperative adventure campaign game set in a Lovecraftian world of monsters, cultists, and madness. This horror universe is incredibly cinematic. There are a staggering number of campaigns that take place all over the world, from the rainforests of southern Mexico to Antarctica to the realm of dreams. And many of the scenarios play out like action set pieces. One memorable example has the players in a stalled train, running from car to car while being chased by some kind of unspeakable abomination. Even the more mundane scenarios where you're confined to a house or, a part of a town, there's always a sense of mystery and tension. You just never know what's going to happen next because literally anything could happen. I also find the characters very memorable, with detailed backstories and personal weaknesses. Multiple novellas have been written about these characters and their lives, so you can explore their stories as deeply as you want. That's my number 10, Arkham Horror the Card Game. Number 9 is Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread. Arydia is an epic, open-world, campaign-based cooperative board game. This is the genre that's most often thought of as being thematic, because it's actually telling a story, often with the use of paragraphs worth of writing. Personally, that's not what I'm looking for in a cinematic game. I want the gameplay to tell most of the story, rather than having to read a novel. Arydia does a good job of balancing this. The story bits on the cards are succinct, yet visually descriptive. I appreciate how colorful and humorous the world of Arydia feels. So many of these types of games are dark and serious and gray and just feel dead. I get so tired of that. Arydia is a breath of fresh air in terms of tone and artwork. I just love it. I really enjoy the way you slowly uncover each new location when you enter. For example, at a town, you just see the outside of the buildings. Only once you go inside does the interior become visible, and you get a quick description of what you see. Sometimes when you take an action or you speak with someone, the location will permanently change. This is a cinematic system that draws you into the world and facilitates great surprises throughout the game. Arydia also excels in the design of its quests. Many of the quests I've encountered so far have been imaginative and fun. They're often multi-part stories that involve exploration and possibly combat. I enjoy how you speak to NPCs and they'll provide you with hints or rumors about interesting or dangerous things that are happening across the map. It means you have a reason to travel somewhere. You aren't just wandering around the open world randomly. A cinematic adventure game should create memorable moments, and Arydia does that consistently. That's why it's my number 9. Number 8 is Frostpunk, the board game. Frostpunk is a cooperative city-building survival board game based on the popular video game. This is on the list mostly because of its visceral setting. There's been an icy apocalypse. You are the leader of a group of survivors who have settled around a giant coal-powered generator, the only source of life-saving warmth in the vast surrounding tundra. The game comes with a giant plastic sculpture of this generator that sits in the middle of the game board, towering over everything. It's a constant reminder that your survival depends on the operation of this machine, which is prone to breaking down. Your life also depends on your ability to find and extract coal from the surrounding snowy landscape in order to keep this furnace lit. This is exactly what I mean when I talk about cinematic storytelling. You feel the chill in your spine, knowing you're always one wrong move away from an icy death. During each round of Frostpunk, you decide how much coal to add to the generator, which in turn determines how far the heat radiates away from it, and how much of your city remains cold. Citizens that work in cold buildings risk getting sick and being unable to work. In addition, you need to produce shelters and food and manage the morale of your citizens. You enact laws, and then every round you'll face an event that might force you to make difficult decisions. These events definitely add to the story and flesh out the daily lives and hardships of the people in your town. But at its core, Frostpunk is a city building game, and that's why it's not higher on this list. Deciding where to construct a hospital and how to spend your wood supplies isn't super cinematic on its own. But if you focus on the tricky moral decisions and the player's tenuous grasp on leadership of a society one mistake or malfunction away from collapse, then I could absolutely see this being a fantastic movie or TV series along the lines of Snowpiercer or Silo. That's my number 8, Frostpunk. Number 7 is Star Wars Outer Rim. This is cheating a bit, since Outer Rim is based on a film universe. You might think, of course it's cinematic, but few movie IP board games evoke the subject matter as well as this, at least for solo play. Star Wars Outer Rim lets you experience life as a bounty hunter, mercenary, and smuggler in the seedy underbelly of the Star Wars universe, my favorite part of the franchise. Players get to fly around from planet to planet, picking up jobs and crew, earning money for delivering illegal cargo, or capturing someone with a bounty on their head. You can upgrade your ship and engage in ship-to-ship combat, or you can try to be stealthy, avoiding patrols. Your reputation with different factions matters as you have encounters on alien planets. Outer Rim has everything you could want from an adventure game set in this world, including plenty of familiar locations and faces. When you add the Unfinished Business expansion, an essential addition to the base game, your character gains a personal ambition, which is a series of goals and quests to complete. This adds so much to the cinematic feel of the game because it gives you and your character motivation. The game now has a plot, and the gameplay gives you just enough story snippets to let your imagination fill in the gaps as you go along. If you're normally turned off by pick up and deliver games, this is still one worth taking a look at, because it makes this typically boring mechanism so thematic and exciting. That's Star Wars Outer Rim, my number 7. Number 6 is Primal: The Awakening. Primal is a card-driven cooperative boss battler. You get to fight many different monstrous beasts, either in one-off scenarios or through an epic campaign. I've made many playthroughs of Primal in the past, including paid sponsorship playthroughs, so please keep that in mind. In Primal, players take the role of hunters. Each hunter has a completely different combat style, with unique sets of action cards and weapons. The same can be said for these monsters. The design of these beasts and their insanely large plastic figures is highly cinematic. They each have different weaknesses and reaction cards and even unique attacks with special rules. But what really brings home the cinematic feel of this game is the card play, which is visceral and intense. It uses the old tried and true mechanism of needing to spend cards from your hand in order to play cards. That always works to create tough decisions. But the cards often give bonus effects if certain types of cards are played either before or after it. In other words, you can create these chained actions, which are really cinematic. So you might move from the monster's head to one of its flanks and use a card called Flanking Strike or something like that, so that you can do damage as you move. Then you play a card that chains off that card to do a massive stab with a bunch of bonus damage. But it causes you to gain aggro, meaning the monster will turn to face you at the end of your string of attacks. it's noticed you. Because of that, you might decide to spend your last card and play a dodge in order to anticipate its attack. The combat is so visual in a way that most boss battlers never achieve. I also love that the monsters mostly react to your specific actions rather than taking a traditional turn. That makes each battle feel more dynamic and thrilling. That's my number 6, Primal: The Awakening. Number 5 is Sleeping Gods. Everything I said earlier about Arydia applies to the open world gameplay of Sleeping Gods. This colorful, quirky universe draws me in. I'm rewarded for adventuring and exploring its strange lands, with surprising encounters and entertaining stories that let me make decisions that have actual consequences. It also has one of the most open-feeling open worlds in any game. I can set sail in any direction in its vast sandbox and discover quests, secrets, puzzles, treasures, dangerous monsters, and friendly companions. This is just such an enjoyable world to get lost in. Ryan Lockett's charming, whimsical artwork sets the perfect tone. I also love the diverse crew members of your ship and how each one begins to take on a unique personality as you build up their skills. Stories emerge from the decisions you make and which quests you choose to pursue. I can totally picture scenes of these characters bickering with each other about where to go and what to do. I can see alliances forming and breaking, romances flourishing and being tested. There's just so much potential here. I also find the combat system pretty cinematic. You get to direct your attacks to specific parts of the body, which weakens the enemy in thematic ways. So for instance, you might damage an enemy's arm, and now they don't hit as hard. They don't make adventure movies like they used to in the 80s and 90s, but Sleeping Gods would make a great return to form. That's why it's my number 5. Number 4 is Halls of Hegra. Halls of Hegra is a solo-only war-themed game where you play as the commander of a group of Norwegian volunteers fighting overwhelming German forces from an abandoned mountain fortress during the early days of World War II. Halls of Hegra takes its inspiration from other survival board games. You can see it in its morale track, in its event cards, and the suspicion track, but it also brings a bunch of new ideas to the table, including a very clever bag building system. But at its heart, it's a tower defense style game, where you're trying to survive in this fortress for 11 days. And it's structured exactly like a 3-act movie, where as you progress, the tension ratchets up until you reach an epic, climactic final battle. Act 1 is the mobilization phase, where you gain new workers with different skills, you build up your defenses by fixing equipment and acquiring new tech, and then the first attack starts and everything is suddenly more tense. You can't do everything you need to do, you simply don't have enough workers, and your decisions become more difficult and more impactful. After that, the first attack turns into an all-out German siege. The tension absolutely skyrockets. Everything goes wrong, equipment breaks down, fighters get injured and killed, supplies run out, and you just have to hang on for dear life. If you can make it past all that, then it ends in a last battle, the final stand, where you're most likely going to get overrun. Even though this game doesn't have a focus on storytelling like other thematic games, the story comes through in the gameplay. Halls of Hegra is pretty much telling the same historical story every game, with just slight changes. But that doesn't really matter to me because the story it tells is so dramatic and harrowing. That's my number 4. Number 3 is Nemesis. Nemesis is a sci-fi survival horror game, best described as an unofficial Aliens the board game. And it absolutely nails Aliens' tense claustrophobic atmosphere. I've said it before, but Nemesis is one of the few board games that actually has effective jump scares. If you don't believe me, just check out my full solo playthrough. A link is in the description. In Nemesis, you wake up from cryogenic sleep on a derelict spaceship infested with hostile aliens. You must explore this dark and creepy ship because you don't remember which rooms are where, because they've been randomized at the beginning of the game, of course. As you sneak from room to room, you either make noise or you hear noise in the walls. Thematically, I'm not exactly sure. Either way, it's terrifying because if you have multiple noise markers in a single location, that results in an alien encounter. And you know that any alien encounter could easily result in infection or instant death. During the course of the game, you're searching for a way to save yourself by either finding and releasing the escape pods or maybe fixing the ship's engine. But each character also has a specific goal they're trying to complete. They have a mission, and you must complete it in order to win the game. You might have to make it to the escape pod, but with an alien egg. Or maybe you need to kill the alien queen. Or make sure that the ship is going to make it to Earth without exploding. These objectives give the characters depth, and it provides a clear plot for the game. You aren't just exploring randomly for no reason. And I love all the little thematic touches, like being able to scan yourself for infections, and if you're infected, you can go to the medical bay. When Nemesis works, it provides unforgettable experiences. That's why it's my number 3. My number 2 is Final Girl. Final Girl is a solo-only card and dice-driven survival game that lets you experience whatever horror trope you desire. I've made playthroughs of 3 different scenarios. The first was a take on the supernatural slasher film Nightmare on Elm Street. The second was inspired in part by the excellent monster movie Tremors. And my most recent playthrough, Panic at Station 2891, is a direct homage to my favorite horror film, The Thing. I recommend checking out all 3 of these videos to learn exactly how the game plays. I'll have links in the description below. It's not surprising that Final Girl is cinematic, since that's the entire point. But it isn't just the parodies and the allusions to film and TV that makes it cinematic. The gameplay in Final Girl organically tells a survival horror story better than any other board game I've ever played. You feel the terror of being the last survivor standing up against a seemingly unstoppable evil force. The fear is palpable. It achieves this feat through a dice system that many gamers will complain is too random and punishing. I'd argue that without the dice, there's no fear. There's no feeling of helplessness that you need in a survival game. As your horror level goes up, you become panicked and start making mistakes, and the dice simulate that perfectly. A survival story is not a strategic or intellectual exercise. It isn't a puzzle to solve. It's about overcoming cruel fate. The fact that Final Girl can achieve this kind of cinematic storytelling using dozens of different settings is just mind-blowing to me. That's my number 2, Final Girl. And my number 1 is Doomtown Reloaded, which is now known as Doomtown Weird West Edition. I admit this is a bit of a cheat. The vast majority of my Doomtown plays have been at 2 players. But the new edition does come with an official solo mode, so it is technically soloable. And I have played solo a few times. I know it's a stretch, but I had to have Doomtown on this list because it is far and away the most cinematic game I've ever played. It's also the greatest TCG-style game ever made, and it's in my top 10 board games of all time. This is just a phenomenal game that has died and been reborn twice, and unfortunately, too few gamers know about it. Doomtown has my favorite setting of all time, the Weird West. This is the mythical Wild West, but also with magic and advanced technology. We're talking horses along with motorcycles, 6-shooters along with flamethrowers and curses. It's the perfect mix of dusty realism, sci-fi silliness, and horrific nightmares. Each player selects a faction. Maybe you want to be the Law Dogs, trying to keep the town of Gomorrah, California safe and crime-free. Or perhaps you would prefer the Sloan Gang, a group of bandits terrorizing the town and its citizens. Instead, you could play as a greedy corporation, the Morgan Cattle Company, with a bunch of mad scientists inventing powerful gadgets. But you should really play as my favorite faction, the Fourth Ring, a group of circus freaks that have recently arrived in town who can cast creepy spells and are generally just disturbing. These factions are complete with unique characters that are so full of personality. Each character feels distinct and fully fleshed out, from their stats and special abilities, and a single quote about them at the bottom of the card. And this is really what makes Doomtown so cinematic. These characters feel alive. Every location feels lived in. Every item is like a prop. In the game, you might equip one of your characters with a horse and a gun and send them out into town to the local saloon. There you might meet a member of another faction and call them out. Maybe you used to control the saloon and now you want it back. Both sides will collect their posses and you'll have a dramatic shootout. To resolve the shootout, you play poker hands that are influenced by the characters present and the action cards that you play. There might be things like Sun in Your Eyes or Pistol Whip. Some cards let you punish your opponent for playing a cheating poker hand. Yeah, that's right. As you're making your poker hand, you can cheat by having multiple of the same card or have 5 aces. This might actually be the single greatest game mechanism ever designed, and it's easily the most cinematic. Just like with Arkham Horror, many stories have been written with these characters outside of the proper game, and I'm not factoring that in at all. I haven't bothered to read any of them because I don't need to. Just playing the game is like watching a fully developed episode of the best sci-fi horror Western TV show that never existed. That's Doomtown Reloaded, my #1 most cinematic solo board game. Anyone who has followed the channel at all knows that there are 2 major games missing on my list. Yes, Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island would have made my list of the most cinematic solo games, but it has been previously exalted to the totally tabled Hall of Fame. Games in the Hall of Fame no longer are eligible for my top 10 lists, thus allowing me to speak about a greater variety of games. Today, a second game enters the Hall of Fame, This War of Mine. This is obviously one of the most cinematic games ever made. It would have been number 3 on my list. The night exploration phase alone is enough to put it on this list, but now it is in the Hall of Fame where it deserves to be. What other games did I miss? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and think about becoming a member. But there you have it, that's all for me. I'd like to thank all the financial supporters of Totally Tabled, including the totally radical Hegra, John Kohler, Scott Myers, and Jay Satterwhite, as well as the totally bodacious Jeremy Robertson. If you're interested in becoming a member, you can join on YouTube or my Patreon at www.patreon.com/totallytabled. You'll gain access to my new exclusive podcast, Table Talk, as well as unboxing videos and whatever extra stuff I come up with. As always, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.